When a coffin is opened for an unusual reason, the insistence of a crow, what is revealed is not what was expected, but rather the key to a much larger mystery, one that no one would dare unearth. The silence in the courtroom was so dense that the rustling of the crow's wings, perched precariously on a high window ledge, seemed deafening. Its black, piercing eyes were fixed on the sealed coffin, which lay in the center of the room, a dark and out-of-place object. Dr. Sophia, her heart pounding erratically, felt the weight of all eyes upon her. Judge Helena Costa, for her part, wore an expression of incredulity that bordered on contempt. "Dr. Sophia," the judge's voice was an icy whisper, "are you truly suggesting that this animal has any relevance to this case? That it, in some way, knows something that forensic analysis failed to find?" Sophia swallowed hard. "Your Honor, Ms. Valeria insists that the crow, which she calls King Crow, has been behaving peculiarly since the coffin's discovery. It keeps pecking and scratching at the wood, as if trying to reveal something. It's an unusual circumstance, I concede, but perhaps worthy of a brief investigation." A murmur ran through the room. The idea was absurd, almost laughable. Valeria herself, seated beside Sophia, maintained her usual impassive expression, but an almost imperceptible glint in her eyes betrayed a contained expectation. Judge Helena sighed, her patience wearing thin. "Doctor, this court is not a stage for circus acts. We have a serious case of concealment of a body. The evidence is overwhelming." At that instant, King Crow let out a loud, shrill caw, flying from the window ledge and landing directly on the coffin lid. It began pecking at the wood with surprising ferocity, its small taps echoing in the room. The scene was so bizarre that even the judge hesitated. The crow's insistence was undeniable. "Bailiff," she finally said, with a tone of resignation mixed with reluctant curiosity, "open the coffin, but let it be recorded that this court considers this a desperate and unprecedented maneuver." The bailiff, visibly uncomfortable, approached the coffin. The metallic sound of the latches being unlocked echoed, amplifying the tension. Sophia held her breath, unsure what to expect. Valeria kept her gaze fixed on the coffin, her posture unwavering. With a sharp creak, the dark wooden lid was slowly lifted. All eyes widened, expecting to see what remained of a body, the proof of the crime. But what was revealed was not what was expected. There was no body. Instead, nestled on a crumpled silk lining, was a small object. It was a dark wooden box, carved with ancient and unknown symbols, about 20 centimeters long. It looked old, very old, and completely out of place in a modern coffin. King Crow, still on the lid, tilted its head, observing the box with an almost human intensity. A chorus of whispers and exclamations erupted in the room. Judge Helena, who had leaned forward, recoiled in her chair, her expression of skepticism replaced by one of genuine perplexity. What is that?" she murmured, her voice weaker than usual. Sophia felt a wave of shock, and at the same time a pang of hope. That was not the victim's body. It was not the evidence that incriminated her. It was something completely different, something the Crow had insisted on revealing. Valeria, for the first time, allowed a subtle emotion to show on her face, a slight lift of the corner of her mouth, a glimpse of an enigmatic smile. The mystery had just deepened, and the key to unraveling it was now in plain sight for all to see, inside a coffin that held secrets far older than anyone could imagine. The collective of shocked and confused voices that filled the courtroom was almost deafening. The previous silence, heavy with morbid expectation, gave way to a hum of murmurs and exclamations. There was no body, only that dark wooden box, carved with ancient symbols, resting on the crumpled silk, a disturbing anachronism. Judge Helena Costa, her eyes fixed on the box, seemed to have lost her voice for a moment. Her face, usually a mask of unwavering authority, now displayed a mixture of incredulity and a hint of growing irritation. What? What does this mean? She finally managed to say, her voice still a whisper, but with a sharper tone. Bailiff, remove that thing from the coffin, carefully. The bailiff, still pale with surprise, reached out hesitantly. King Crow, however, let out another caw, softer this time, and hopped from the coffin lid to the edge of the wooden box, pecking at it lightly. It was an almost protective gesture, as if the box were its own and shouldn't be touched by strange hands. Sophia, feeling the blood rush back into her veins with a new urgency, stepped forward. Your Honor, with all due respect, the presence of this box is crucial. It proves that this coffin did not contain the body the prosecution alleges Ms. Valeria concealed. Furthermore, it validates King Crow's insistence. Judge Helena frowned, regaining some of her composure. Validates what, Doctor? That a bird made us open an empty coffin to reveal an old box. That doesn't exonerate your client from concealment of a body. It merely means the body wasn't in this coffin. The crime still exists, and Miss Valeria is still the prime suspect. Valeria always maintained she didn't know where the body was, Sophia retorted, her voice gaining strength and conviction. She insisted that King Crow was trying to show us something different. This box is that something different, and the way the crow protects it, pecking at it, suggests it's of extreme importance to the mystery. Valeria, beside Sophia, finally broke her silence, though in an almost inaudible tone that nonetheless resonated in the tense quiet of the room. The box. It holds secrets, ancient secrets. King Crow knows. Judge Helena looked at Valeria with a penetrating gaze, as if trying to decipher an enigma. What secrets, Miss Valeria? And what does a bird have to do with it? More than just a bird, Your Honor, Sophia interjected, feeling she was treading on dangerous ground, but with no other choice. He is a guide. Ms. Valeria believes he can lead us to the truth. If he guided us to this box, which Ms. Valeria insists is a link to the truth, perhaps he can guide us to the actual location. Udin, a disbelieving laugh echoed from one of the prosecutors, but Judge Helena silenced him with a stern look. She was clearly in a dilemma. The situation was absurd, but the absence of the body in the coffin and the presence of the box, guided by the crow, created a crack in the prosecution's narrative. Dr. Sophia, the judge said. Her voice now laden with a reluctant curiosity, she tried to disguise with authority. Are you suggesting that this guide can show us where the victim's body really is? Sophia nodded, her heart pounding. Yes, Your Honor. I propose that we present King Crow with a detailed map of the property where the crime occurred. If it has that intelligence, that capacity to know, it can show us. The room plunged into astonished silence. The idea was so outrageous, so outside any legal protocol, that it seemed ripped from a Gothic novel. King Crow, as if understanding the gravity of the moment, let out a loud caw and flew from the box to Sophia's shoulder, rubbing its head against the lawyer's face, a gesture of apparent complicity. Judge Helena closed her eyes for an instant, as if pondering the sanity of everyone there, including her own. Logic screamed against it, but the facts, the empty coffin, the mysterious box, the bird's persistence, defied logic. The prosecution was weakened by the absence of the main evidence at the expected location. Very well, Dr. Sophia, the judge finally declared, opening her eyes and facing the room with an expression of resignation and defiance. This court is willing to grant your unusual motion. Prepare the map, but let it be clear, if this is merely a spectacle, the consequences for your client and your career will be severe. The victim's body must be found, and if this bird is the only hope we have, then so be it. May King Crow show us the truth. A murmur of astonishment ran through the room. The judge's decision was unprecedented, a leap of faith into the abyss of the inexplicable. Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine. The stakes were high, but hope, once a tenuous thread, now shone with an almost palpable intensity. Valeria's fate, and perhaps the very reputation of justice, now rested on the wings of a crow. The silence that followed Judge Helena's unprecedented declaration was even heavier than before, laden with a mixture of astonishment and incredulity. Sophia felt King Crow lightly tighten its claw on her shoulder, a comforting weight that anchored her to the bizarre reality unfolding. Her eyes met Valeria's, who offered an almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of the gamble they had taken. "Bailiff," the judge finally ordered, her voice still tinged with an authority that seemed to fight against reason itself, "provide a detailed map of Ms. Valeria's property. A topographical map, if possible, with all visible structures and landmarks." The bailiff, a corpulent man who until then had seemed unshakable, stammered a reply and hurried out, visibly disturbed. The murmur restarted, more intense this time, but was quickly silenced by a furious glare from the judge. Sophia, her heart still pounding, felt adrenaline course through her veins. The opportunity was there, fragile and surreal. She turned to Valeria. "Ms. Valeria, is there any specific place on the property that King Crow usually frequents? Any point of interest it might recognize on the map?" Valeria pondered for a moment, her dark eyes fixed on a distant point. He always was drawn to the old greenhouse, but not inside it, behind it, where the roots of that old fig tree spread. He spends hours there, pecking at the ground. Sophia made a mental note, the greenhouse and the fig tree, crucial reference points. Minutes that felt like hours dragged on. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Finally, the bailiff returned, carrying a large, laminated map, unrolling it with difficulty onto the central courtroom table. It was a detailed map of Valeria's extensive property, showing the main house, the gardens, the greenhouse, and even the most prominent trees. Judge Helena, with an expression of someone about to witness a bad magic trick, nodded to Sophia. "Doctor, proceed, but let it be clear that this court will not tolerate any staging." Sophia took a deep breath. She approached the table, King Crow still on her shoulder, observing the map with an almost childlike curiosity. She gently removed it from her shoulder and placed it on the edge of the table, near the map. "King Crow," she whispered, her voice soft and encouraging. "You showed us the box. Now, can you show us where the truth is truly hidden?" The crow tilted its head, its black eyes fixed on the map. It took a small hop, landing in the center of the paper, its small claws lightly scratching the surface. Absolute silence fell over the room. All eyes were fixed on the bird, waiting, doubting. King Crow began to walk slowly across the map, its steps delicate but determined. It stopped at several points, pecking lightly, as if examining the details. Sophia felt a lump in her throat. Was it truly understanding? Or was it just a bird walking on paper? Suddenly, the crow stopped. It was over an area of the map that represented the back of the property near the greenhouse. It raised its head, let out a low caw, and to everyone's shock, began to peck at a specific spot on the map with renewed ferocity, exactly where Sophia had imagined, at the base of a large fig tree behind the greenhouse, where the roots spread. It pecked repeatedly, with a force that seemed to want to pierce the laminate as if it were unearthing something. A collective gasp swept through the room. There was no doubt. The crow wasn't just walking, it was pointing. Precisely. Judge Helena, who had leaned forward, now had wide eyes, her mouth slightly agape. The incredulity on her face gave way to genuine, almost reverential astonishment. The prosecutors, previously skeptical and mocking, were pale, their expressions of shock undeniable. Sophia felt a wave of relief and triumph. She knelt beside the crow, which was still pecking at the spot on the map. "Your Honor," she said, her voice choked with emotion but firm. "King Crow has shown us. It has shown us where the victim's body is hidden." Valeria, for the first time in the entire trial, allowed a tear to trickle down her impassive face. It was a tear of vindication, of a truth finally seeing the light. Judge Helena took a moment to regain her composure. She leaned back in her chair, running a hand across her forehead. This is unbelievable," she murmured, more to herself than to the room. She looked at the crow, then at Sophia, and finally at Valeria. "Bailiff, assemble an investigation team immediately. Go to Ms. Valeria's property. Verify the location indicated on the map by King Crow, and bring back whatever you find. This court will recess until we have confirmation." A murmur of astonishment swept through the room. The judge's decision was an earthquake in the legal world. Sophia picked up King Crow in her arms, feeling the warmth of its body. It had done its part. Now, the truth was about to be unearthed, and with it, Valeria's innocence. The mystery of the box and the ancient secret still lingered, but the first and most urgent knot had been untied by the wings of a crow. The courtroom, once a sanctuary of order and formality, transformed into a whirlwind of whispers, exclamations, and movement. Journalists scrambled to make calls, lawyers whispered with their assistants, and the public, previously restrained, now stirred in a mixture of astonishment and fascination. Judge Helena Costa's decision was a landmark, a breach of protocol so radical that it would echo through the annals of justice. Sophia, still kneeling, felt King Crow nestle in her arms, a small, warm, living weight amidst the coldness of reason. Her tear-filled eyes met Valeria's, who offered an almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of the gamble they had taken. The solitary tear had dried, but the promise of freedom shone in her eyes. "Recess!" Judge Helena's voice, though still strong, seemed a little hoarser, as if authority itself was recovering from the shock. She struck the gavel with unusual force, making the wood resonate. "This court is in recess until further notice. No one shall leave without the bailiff's permission." Despite the order, the room continued to vibrate with the energy of disbelief. Sophia stood up, the crow still in her arms, and walked to the defense table. Valeria watched her, silent gratitude overflowing. "Dr. Sophia," Valeria whispered, her voice almost inaudible. I don't know how to thank you." Sophia merely squeezed her client's hand, a gesture of solidarity that transcended words. "It's not over yet, Miss Valeria, but we're closer." As the room was gradually emptied under the bailiff's supervision, Judge Helena remained in her chair, her eyes fixed on the map that lay on the table, the spot pecked by the crow still visible. Her mind, trained for logic and irrefutable proof, struggled to process what she had just witnessed. An animal, a crow, pointing to the truth. It was absurd, and yet the precision of King Crow's gesture was undeniable. Outside the courthouse, the news spread like wildfire. Reporters gathered, microphones in hand, demanding details about the crow witness. The investigation team, led by the detective in charge of the case, a skeptical and pragmatic man named Inspector Almeida, was already en route to Valeria's property. The drive to Ms. Valeria's property was tense. Almeida, at the wheel of an unmarked SUV, grumbled about the farce he was being forced to stage. "A crow, for God's sake! Have you ever heard of such a thing? This is a circus, not a courtroom." His partner, the young and idealistic Detective Silva, tried to keep an open mind. But Inspector, the judge ordered it, and Dr. Sophia seemed so convinced. "Conviction isn't proof, Silva. It's what desperate people use when they have nothing else, and this rookie lawyer is desperate." Upon arriving at the vast property, the afternoon sun was already beginning to set, casting long shadows over the well-maintained gardens and the imposing architecture of the house. The glass and metal greenhouse gleamed in the distance. Almeida and his team, equipped with shovels and digging equipment, followed the provided map, which now had the exact spot marked in red. "Here," Almeida scoffed, stopping before the imposing fig tree, whose twisted roots clung to the earth like tentacles. The location was exactly as described, behind the greenhouse, somewhat hidden by dense foliage. "Start digging. But don't expect to find anything but dirt and worms." The officers began to work, the sound of shovels tearing into the earth, breaking the property's silence. Almeida's initial skepticism was palpable. But as minutes turned into an hour and the hole deepened, a strange seriousness began to settle over the team. The earth was soft, but it seemed to have been disturbed at some point. Suddenly, one of the shovels struck something solid with a dull thud. "Inspector!" one of the officers exclaimed, his voice choked with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "I think we found something." Almeida approached, his face tense. He knelt and began to remove the earth with his bare hands, incredulity giving way to a growing sense of dread. First, a piece of dark fabric, then the unmistakable texture of a bone, and then the undeniable shape of a body wrapped in a makeshift shroud, slowly emerging from the damp earth. The air seemed to thin. The smell, though muffled by the earth, was unmistakable. "Stop!" Almeida ordered, his voice a hoarse whisper. He stood up, his face pale. "Call forensics and inform the court. The crow was right. The truth, buried under the fig tree for a time no one could pinpoint, finally saw the light. Valeria's innocence, once a fragile hope, now solidified with the macabre discovery. King Crow had not merely pointed to a location, it had unearthed a secret, and with it the reputation of an entire court. The world was about to be turned upside down. Inspector Almeida stepped back a few paces from the freshly opened grave, the smell of damp earth and something denser and metallic permeating the air. His face, previously marked by skepticism, now displayed a pallor that contrasted with the cold sweat on his forehead. The other officers stopped digging, their shovels still suspended, their eyes fixed on the form emerging from the earth. Detective Silver, the youngest on the team, swallowed hard, his hand instinctively over his mouth. "No one touches anything," Almeida ordered, his voice still a hoarse whisper, but charged with renewed authority. "Silver, call forensics, ask for a full team, and call the court. Inform Judge Helena Costa, tell her that the crow was right." The phrase echoed in the property's silence, almost absurd in its simplicity, yet laden with monumental weight. Silver nodded, picking up the radio with trembling hands. The sun had already set completely, and darkness began to envelop the scene, making the discovery even more grim. Flashlights were switched on, casting beams of light over the makeshift shroud and the disturbed earth. Almeida's team, accustomed to crime scenes, felt a different kind of chill. It wasn't just the macabre discovery, but the way it had been revealed. Back at the courthouse, Judge Helena Costa was in her chambers, her head resting in her hands, her eyes fixed on the map the bailiff had left on her desk. The spot pecked by King Crow seemed to glow in the dim light. Her mind, a labyrinth of laws and precedents, was in turmoil. A crow. The idea was laughable, outrageous, but the image of the bird pecking the map with such conviction was unforgettable. She was about to make a decision that could define her career for better or worse. It was then that the phone rang, a jarring sound that made her jump. She answered, her voice tense. "Judge Costa." On the other end, Almeida's voice, grave and restrained, delivered the news. Your Honor, Inspector Almeida here. We are at Miss Valeria's property. We found the body, exactly where the crow indicated. A heavy silence fell over the line. Helena closed her eyes, a wave of shock and surprisingly relief washing over her. It was true. It was real. The absurd had become irrefutable proof. "Understood, Inspector," she said, her voice firmer now. "Secure the scene. Forensics is on the way. I will return to the court immediately." She hung up the phone and stood, her mind working at high speed. What did this mean for the case, for Valeria, for justice itself? In the lawyer's waiting room, Sophia and Valeria waited. Sophia, with King Crow perched on a makeshift stand, tried to remain calm, but the anxiety was palpable. Valeria, for her part, seemed to have found new strength. The tear from before had been the seed of a hope that was now sprouting. "Do you think they'll find it, Dr. Sophia?" Valeria asked, her voice low. Sophia stroked the crow's feathers. "I have faith, Miss Valeria. King Crow showed us the truth. The truth always finds a way." The bailiff opened the door. "Dr. Sophia, Miss Valeria, Judge Costa requests your immediate return to the courtroom." A shiver ran down Sophia's spine. It was the news. Good or bad, it was coming. She picked up King Crow and held it close, walking beside Valeria back into the courtroom. The room was packed again, but the buzz was different. There was a tense expectation in the air, a premonition that something extraordinary was about to happen. Judge Helena Costa entered, her posture more erect than ever, but with a different glint in her eyes. She sat down, struck the gavel with a dry sound that silenced everyone. "This court is back in session," she declared, her voice resonating with a new gravity. She looked at Sophia, then at Valeria, and finally at the public. "We have received an update from the investigation team at Miss Valeria's property." Everyone held their breath. "Inspector Almeida has confirmed the discovery of a human body at the exact location indicated by King Crow." A collective, muffled gasp swept through the room. Journalists began typing frantically on their laptops and phones. The prosecutors, previously confident, were now in shock, their faces pale. Sophia felt her legs weaken. A wave of relief so intense it almost knocked her over. Valeria, beside her, closed her eyes, a silent tear tracing a path down her face, this time a tear of pure liberation. "In light of this new and extraordinary evidence," the judge continued, her voice now laden with contained emotion, "this court cannot proceed with the charge of concealment of a body against Ms. Valeria. The accused, Ms. Valeria, is acquitted of this charge." The gavel struck again, a final and decisive sound. The room erupted, shouts, exclamations, the scraping of chairs. Valeria's innocence, proclaimed by a crow, was now a fact, but the body found, and the mystery surrounding it, only opened new and deeper questions. Who was the victim, and who was the true killer? King Crow had unearthed a truth, but also revealed a much larger secret. The courtroom, once a sanctuary of order and law, transformed into a whirlwind of emotions. Judge Helena Costa's gavel, which had sealed Valeria's innocence, seemed to have shattered the barriers of formality. Cries of surprise and exclamations of disbelief echoed, blending with the frenzy of journalists whose fingers flew across keyboards, eager to be the first to report the most bizarre story in legal history. Sophia, with King Crow still nestled in her arms, felt the ground beneath her feet waver. It wasn't weakness, but the overwhelming impact of a relief that flooded her, washing away months of tension and despair. Her tear-filled eyes met Valeria's, who seemed to have aged and rejuvenated at the same time. The tear of liberation still shone on her face, but a new kind of shadow, one of uncertainty and perhaps a newly awakened fear, began to form in her eyes. "Ms. Valeria, Dr. Sophia, please follow me," said a bailiff, his voice trying to assert itself over the chaos. He led them through a side door. away from the avalanche of questions and approaching flashes. In a quieter corridor, Sophia finally released the breath she seemed to have held her entire life. "We did it, Miss Valeria! You're free!" Valeria nodded, but her smile was fragile. "Free from the concealment charge. Yes, Dr. Sophia, but the body. It was there. And now, the question is, who put it there, and why?" Her voice, previously resigned, now carried a tone of urgency. "I don't know who that person is, Dr. Sophia, I swear, but someone killed her and buried her on my property. That doesn't make me free, it just puts me in another nightmare." Sophia clutched King Crow, feeling the soft vibration of its feathers. "Don't worry, Miss Valeria. King Crow showed us the truth once. It will guide us again. Now the investigation shifts. It's no longer about you concealing, but about who committed the murder." Meanwhile, in Judge Helena Costa's chambers, the silence was almost deafening after the courtroom's pandemonium. She sat at her desk, the map still there, the spot marked by the crow seeming like a beacon amidst the darkness of her doubts. Her decision, delivered with such conviction, now reverberated with a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. She had challenged logic, tradition, and even her own disbelief, and the truth had rewarded her. "A crow," she murmured to herself, a faint, ironic smile playing on her lips. "Who would have thought?" But the irony soon gave way to gravity. Valeria's acquittal was just the first act. The body found opened a Pandora's box of new questions, new investigations, and a killer at large. The court's reputation, her own reputation, was now intrinsically linked to this unprecedented case. How would justice deal with a winged witness? And how would the world react to a truth unearthed by an animal? She picked up the phone, dialing Inspector Almeida's number. "Inspector, Judge Costa here. I need a complete and detailed report on the crime scene. Every piece of evidence, every detail. And I want forensics to work with maximum urgency to identify the victim. This case is far from over. In fact, it has just begun." On the other end of the line, Almeida, still at Valeria's property, with the forensic team already working under powerful lights, felt a chill. The smell of earth and death still hung in the air, but now, mixed with it, was the unmistakable scent of a deepening mystery. King Crow had pointed the way, but the journey to the complete truth was only just beginning. Valeria's innocence was a fact, but the shadow of the true killer loomed, denser and more threatening than ever. The world was about to discover that sometimes justice has wings. The courtroom's buzz, now a chorus of shocked and excited voices, seemed a distant echo, as Sophia and Valeria were led by a bailiff down a side corridor, away from the horde of reporters and curious onlookers. King Crow, nestled in Sophia's arms, seemed strangely calm, oblivious to the storm it had unleashed. "You're free, Miss Valeria," Sophia whispered, her voice choked with emotion, a trembling smile on her lips. The adrenaline of victory kept her standing. Valeria nodded, but her face, though relieved, carried a new shadow. "Free from the concealment charge, yes, Dr. Sophia, but the body, it was there, on my property. Who put it there, and why?" Her voice, previously resigned, now carried a tone of urgency and palpable fear. "I don't know who that person is, Dr. Sophia. I swear, someone killed her and buried her here." Sophia clutched King Crow. "Don't worry, Miss Valeria. It will guide us again. It's no longer about you concealing, but about who committed the murder." The young lawyer felt a new purpose, a flame ignited in her chest. Meanwhile, in Judge Helena Costa's chambers, the silence was almost deafening. Her decision, delivered with such conviction, reverberated with a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. She had challenged logic and tradition, and the truth had rewarded her. She picked up the phone again, dialing Inspector Almeida's number. "Inspector, Judge Costa here. This case is far from over. In fact, it has just begun. The investigation now focuses on identifying the victim and the true killer. Spare no effort. On the other end of the line, Almeida, still at Valeria's property, with the forensic team already working under the powerful lights of portable floodlights, felt a chill. The body, wrapped in a makeshift shroud, was being carefully removed, every movement documented. "Understood, Your Honor," Almeida replied, his voice grave and professional, but with an underlying tone of awe. He looked at the dark hole from which the body had been exhumed. "The forensic team is already on site, Judge. We are treating this as a homicide case now. The priority is identifying the victim and collecting any clues that lead us to the killer." He hung up the phone and turned to his team. "You heard the judge. This is a homicide. Every detail matters. No one leaves here until we are certain nothing has been missed. And Silva," he called the younger detective, "I want you to start tracking down any missing persons in the region over the past few years. Anyone. This case just got a lot bigger." Valeria's innocence was a fact, but the shadow of the true killer loomed, denser and more threatening than ever, over the property and over the city itself. The world was about to discover that sometimes justice has wings, but those wings can lead to even darker truths. The fluorescent light of the corridor contrasted with the dramatic dimness of the courtroom, and the air there was colder, denser. Sophia felt her heart pound in her chest, a dizzying mix of exhaustion and triumph. Her knees still trembled, and the sensation of having lifted an immense weight from her shoulders was almost physical. "You're free, Ms. Valeria," Sophia said. The adrenaline of victory kept her standing, but the reality of what had just happened still felt surreal. Valeria nodded, but her face, though relieved, carried a new shadow, a concern that deepened with each step. Her eyes, previously weary with resignation, now shone with an almost feverish urgency. "But the body, it was there, on my property. Who put it there?" The relief of acquittal was a balm, but the discovery of the body was a fresh wound, opening an abyss of new uncertainties. "I swear, Dr. Sophia, this puts me in another nightmare, an even darker nightmare perhaps, because now it's not about me, but about a lost life and a killer at large." Sophia clutched King Crow, feeling the soft warmth of its feathers against her skin. The bird, with its intelligent, penetrating eyes, seemed to observe everything with an ancestral wisdom, a silent guardian of truth. "Don't worry, Ms. Valeria. It will guide us again. It's no longer about you concealing, but about who committed the murder. And we will find out, no matter the cost." The young lawyer felt a new purpose, a flame ignited in her chest, stronger and brighter than ever. Justice for Valeria was just the beginning. True justice for the unknown victim was the next and most challenging step. Meanwhile, in Judge Helena Costa's mahogany chambers, the silence was almost deafening, a brutal contrast to the pandemonium that still echoed outside. She sat at her desk, her hands resting on the crime scene map, the spot marked by the crow seeming like a beacon amidst the darkness of her doubts and convictions. Her decision, delivered with such conviction and courage, now reverberated in her mind with a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. She had challenged logic, tradition, and even her own disbelief, and the truth in an unimaginable way had rewarded her. "A crow," she murmured to herself, a faint, ironic smile playing on her lips, an admission that the world could still surprise her in extraordinary ways. Valeria's acquittal was just the first act of a much larger and more complex play. The body found opened a Pandora's box of new questions, new investigations, and most alarmingly, a killer at large. The court's reputation, her own reputation as a magistrate, was now intrinsically linked to this unprecedented case, a case that defied all conventions and would be scrutinized by the entire world. She picked up the phone again, dialing Inspector Almeida's number with renewed determination. Inspector, Judge Costa here. Her voice was firm, cutting through any hesitation. I need a complete and detailed report on the crime scene. Spare no effort. The entire city is watching us, and the credibility of this court depends on us finding the complete truth. On the other end of the line, Almeida, still at Valeria's property, under the powerful lights of portable floodlights that cut through the night's darkness, felt a chill run down his spine. The smell of damp earth and death still hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable, but now, mixed with it, was the unmistakable scent of a deepening mystery, becoming more complex with each passing minute. The body, wrapped in a makeshift shroud, was being carefully removed by the forensic team. Every movement meticulously documented, every fragment of earth sifted in search of clues. Understood, Your Honor, Almeida replied, his voice grave and professional, but with an underlying tone of awe he could barely disguise. He looked at the dark hole from which the body had been exhumed, a scar on the earth that now represented a new and terrible truth. The priority is identifying the victim and collecting any clues that lead us to the killer. We have already isolated a larger area of the property and are conducting a complete sweep, inch by inch. He hung up the phone and turned to his team, his eyes sweeping over their tired and shocked faces. You heard the judge. This is a homicide. Every detail matters. And Silva, he called the younger detective, who was frantically writing on his clipboard, I want you to start tracking down any missing persons in the region over the past few years. Anyone. Check old files, police reports, everything. This case just got a lot bigger and more dangerous. The killer is out there and he knows we're close. King Crow had pointed the way, unearthing a shocking truth. But the journey to the complete truth was only just beginning. Valeria's innocence was an undeniable fact, but the shadow of the true killer loomed, denser and more threatening than ever, not only over the widow's property but over the city itself, which now found itself plunged into a mystery that defied reason. The world was about to discover that sometimes justice has wings, but those wings can lead to even darker truths, revealing the hidden face of evil. The exit from the courthouse was a pandemonium. Reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers clustered at the doors, their voices blending into a deafening clamor. Sophia, with King Crow held firmly in her arms, used her body to shield Valeria, who seemed to shrink under the incessant flash of cameras. No comment! Please, give us space! Sophia shouted, her voice almost inaudible in the confusion. A bailiff struggled to clear a path, pushing the crowd back. Valeria, pale and trembling, clung to Sophia's arm, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Freedom, which should have been pure relief, came laden with a new kind of terror. They managed to reach Sophia's car, which was waiting a few meters away. As soon as the doors closed, the sudden silence inside the vehicle was almost as shocking as the noise outside. Valeria let out a deep sigh, her hands trembling as she brought them to her face. I don't know what to do now, Dr. Sophia. Where do I go? My house? It's a crime scene. Sophia started the car, slowly pulling away from the crowd. You're not alone, Miss Valeria. You can come to my office for now. It's safe and discreet. We need to discuss the next steps. King Crow chirped softly, as if agreeing, and rubbed its head against Sophia's chin. The young lawyer felt the weight of responsibility, but also a renewed clarity. Valeria's innocence was proven, but the true victim still cried out for justice. Meanwhile, at Valeria's property, the night wore on, but forensic activity did not diminish. Under artificial lights, the team worked meticulously, sifting the earth, cataloguing every fragment. Dr. Mendez, the chief medical examiner, examined the remains with a grave expression. The body is in an advanced state of decomposition, Inspector, he informed Almeida, who watched closely. It will be a challenge to identify the victim. There are no documents, obvious jewelry. It appears to have been buried for years, and the cause of death is still uncertain. but there are indications of severe blunt force trauma to the skull. Almeida nodded, his brow furrowed. Do whatever it takes, Doctor. We need an identity. And Silva. Anything on the missing persons. Detective Silva, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, held a stack of reports. Inspector, the list is enormous. We have dozens of missing persons in the region over the past 10 years. I've started cross-referencing data with Dr. Mendez's estimate of the burial time. It's a needle in a haystack, but we're focusing on unsolved cases where the person simply vanished without a trace. Keep going, Silva. Every name is a life. The killer couldn't have just vanished into thin air. He's out there, and he knows what was hidden has been revealed. That makes him dangerous. Almeida looked at the dark hole, now empty, but still charged with a sinister energy. The truth had been unearthed, but the hunt had only just begun. In Judge Costa's chambers, dawn was breaking. She couldn't sleep. The image of the crow pointing to the map, the incredulity in her own eyes, the courage that propelled her to make an unprecedented decision. The repercussions would be immense, but she had no regrets. However, the responsibility was now even greater. She opened an old file, a missing persons case from 5 years ago that had never been solved. A woman of similar age and physical characteristics to Valeria had vanished without a trace. Was it a coincidence, or had King Crow revealed more than just a body, but the beginning of an even more complex web of crimes? The judge felt a shiver. Justice had wings, yes, but those wings now flew into unknown and dangerous territory. Arriving at Sophia's office was a relief, a refuge from the whirlwind of flashes and voices that pursued them. King Crow, still nestled in the lawyer's arms, seemed to share in the weariness, but also the vigilance. The small apartment converted into an office, with its stacked books and the soft light of a lamp, offered a welcome contrast to the darkness of the night and the chaos outside. Valeria collapsed into a leather armchair, her body trembling uncontrollably. The tears, which she had held back with superhuman strength, finally came, silent and copious. "I can't believe it, Dr. Sophia," she murmured between sobs, her face still pale and marked by terror. "I'm free, but I don't feel free. I feel haunted. Who was that person? Why were they on my property? And what does this mean for me now?" Sophia sat opposite her, King Crow gently landing on her desk, observing Valeria with its dark, deep eyes. "It means the truth is more complex than we imagine, Ms. Valeria. But it also means you are innocent, absolutely innocent of any concealment. Now the fight is different. It's to find the true killer." The lawyer picked up a glass of water and handed it to Valeria, who drank eagerly. "I know it's frightening, but you're not alone. King Crow showed us the way once, and it will continue to guide us. My priority now is to ensure your safety and peace of mind while the police do their job." Valeria looked at the crow, a mixture of fear and reverence in her eyes. "It's extraordinary. It saved my life. But now it has led us to something even more terrible." "And it will lead us to complete justice," Sophia replied firmly, feeling the flame of her purpose burn even brighter. "Justice for the unknown victim, and justice for you who were dragged into this nightmare. You can stay here as long as you need. My couch is small, but it's safe." Meanwhile, at Valeria's property, the night transformed into an arena of lights and shadows. Dr. Mendez, the chief medical examiner, worked with a team of experts under the powerful lights of floodlights. The body, now on a forensic stretcher, was meticulously examined. "Inspector, decomposition is advanced, as I said," Dr. Mendez informed Almeida, who watched with a grim expression. "I estimate the body has been buried for at least 5 to 7 years. Identification will be a considerable challenge. There are no clear fingerprints, and any trace of external DNA may be compromised by the earth and time." He paused, adjusting his glasses. However, there are clear indications of severe blunt force trauma to the skull, multiple fractures. It's consistent with a strong blow, perhaps with a heavy object. The cause of death, Inspector, is homicide. Almeida pressed his lips together, the confirmation only solidifying the gravity of the situation. Any distinctive characteristics? Anything that might help us identify her? The victim is a woman of medium height, between 160 meters and 165 meters. Age is harder to determine precisely, but I'd say between 30 and 50 years old. There are no jewelry, clothes, or any personal objects that could give us an immediate clue. It seems the killer took care not to leave anything that could identify her. Detective Silva, with the stack of missing persons reports in hand, approached. Inspector, I've cross-referenced the data with Dr. Mendez's estimate. We have a list of about 20 missing women in the region over the past 7 years who fit the general characteristics. It's a starting point, but it's still vast. Vast, but not impossible, Almeida retorted, his voice laden with determination. Start investigating each of those names. Contact families, revisit files. We need an identity, Silva. The killer is out there, and he knows his secret has been unearthed. That makes him more dangerous than ever. We cannot fail. In Judge Helena Costa's chambers, dawn was breaking, but sleep seemed a distant memory. She was poring over the file she had found, a missing persons case from 5 years ago. The name, Ana Lucia Pereira. Age, 42. Height, 1.62. Vanished without a trace. The description chillingly matched Dr. Mendez's estimate. The judge felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't just a coincidence. King Crow had not merely revealed a body. It had opened a door to a much deeper mystery, perhaps a series of crimes. Valeria's acquittal was just the tip of the iceberg. True justice, the true face of evil, was beginning to reveal itself. She picked up the phone again, dialing Almeida's number. Inspector, Judge Costa here. I have a name for you. Ana Lucia Pereira. Missing for 5 years. I want you to investigate this file with maximum priority, and I want you to keep me informed of every development. This case, it's just beginning to show us its true colors. On the other end of the line, Almeida jotted down the name, feeling the weight of the new information. The web was tightening. Judge Costa, with her courage and intuition, had become a fundamental piece in this dangerous game. The entire city was about to discover that the truth, when finally unearthed, could be darker and more complex than anyone could imagine. And King Crow, the silent guardian, seemed to observe everything, awaiting the next step in the journey to the complete truth. Understood, Judge. Silva, stop what you're doing. We have a hot lead. Pull everything on Ana Lucia Pereira, family, friends, history, everything. And prepare a team to go to her house at dawn. The detective nodded, already moving with renewed urgency. Dawn was beginning to tint the sky a pale grey, promising a new day, but also the revelation of long-buried secrets. Almeida and Silva, fueled by coffee and a sense of urgency burning in their veins, were already at Ana Lucia Pereira's last known address. It was a modest apartment building on the outskirts of the city, now occupied by new tenants. An elderly woman, Donna Clara, a longtime resident, remembered Ana Lucia vividly. Ana Lucia was a discreet but very kind young woman, Donna Clara said, her wrinkled hands holding a steaming cup of tea. She vanished suddenly without saying goodbye, but there was a man, a married man, I think. He used to pick her up in a dark car always at night, and sometimes she would return with a sad expression. Where did they usually go, Donna Clara? Silva asked, noting down every word. Oh, I don't know the exact place, my dear, but I remember her once saying it was a very large place, with many gardens, quite secluded. She said it was the only place they could be together without being seen. and that the man had some connection to the property. Almeida felt a shiver. Ms. Valeria's property. The description matched perfectly. The web was closing in. Back at the station, while Silva investigated Ana Lucia's life, Almeida received a call from Judge Costa. "Inspector, I secured a warrant to access the financial records of Ana Lucia Pereira and her closest circle. There's something that bothers me. She had a small investment fund that was emptied shortly before her disappearance, and the beneficiary is a name that seems familiar to me." "Who, Judge?" Almeida asked, his heart pounding harder. "Ricardo Menezes, a local businessman known for his political connections and for being one of the main shareholders of the late Valeria's husband's former company, Mr. Augusto." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place with chilling precision. Ricardo Menezes, a powerful man, with access to Valeria's property through his business ties with Augusto, and a financial motive to silence Ana Lucia, who had likely discovered his wrongdoings. Donna Clara's story about the large place with gardens and the man's connection to the property now made sense. He used Valeria's property for his secret meetings, and when Ana Lucia became a problem, he killed her and buried her there, counting on the isolation of the location and Valeria's reputation to divert any suspicion. In Sofia's office, Valeria, calmer now, watched King Crow. It seemed restless, gently flapping its wings, as if sensing the imminent revelation. The phone rang. It was Almeida. "Dr. Sofia, we found the killer." The inspector's voice was laden with grim satisfaction. "Ricardo Menezes. He's being apprehended at this moment. Ana Lucia Pereira was investigating his financial irregularities in your late husband's company, Ms. Valeria. She threatened to expose him. He killed her and buried her on your property, knowing it would be the last place anyone would look and that you would be the prime suspect." Valeria let out a deep sigh, a mixture of relief and horror. "So, my husband, he wasn't involved?" "Not directly in the murder, Ms. Valeria," Almeida replied. "But Menezes' actions were linked to the company he helped build. Ana Lucia was seeking justice and Menezes silenced her." Sofia felt tears well up. Valeria's innocence was completely proven, and true justice was being served. She looked at King Crow, which now observed her with its intelligent eyes. "It guided us, didn't it?" Sofia whispered, more to herself than to Valeria. "He was the herald of truth," Valeria replied, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "My feathered guardian angel." Hours later, the news of Ricardo Menezes' arrest exploded in the media, completely overshadowing the Black Widow drama. The city was in shock. Judge Costa, in her chambers, felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. Justice had been served in a way she could never have predicted. King Crow, the messenger of the impossible, had redefined her understanding of law and truth. Sofia and Valeria sat on a park bench, the morning sun warming their faces. King Crow was perched on a nearby tree, observing them. "What will you do now, Ms. Valeria?" Sofia asked, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in weeks. Valeria looked at the crow, then at Sofia. "I will rebuild my life, Dr. Sofia, without shadows, without secrets. And you have become an extraordinary lawyer. You heard what no one else heard. You saw what no one else saw." Sofia smiled. "I had a good teacher and a good guide." King Crow let out a soft caw, like a farewell, and took flight, disappearing into the blue sky. It had fulfilled its mission. The truth, however hidden, would always find its way to the light, sometimes with the help of an unlikely guardian. Justice, after all, was not just a matter of laws and evidence, but also of intuition, courage, and occasionally a touch of magic. The case of the Black Widow and King Crow would be remembered not only as a legal landmark, but as a legend, a reminder that truth, like a crow, always finds its way home.